and welcome to the Overview and Audit Committee meeting of the Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Fire Authority. My name is Mahbub Hussain and I am the Vice Chairman of the committee. Although members of the public are able to attend and observe in person, following the meeting, a video recording will be uploaded to the authority's YouTube channel. The first item of the business is the election of the chairman. I would now ask Graham Britton to ask for a nomination for a chairman from the floor.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there nominations for the position of chairman for the year 24-25?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Morning, Chairman. I'd like to propose David Carroll as our chairman. He's guided us through the last 3 years with his experience, his humour, and he's genuine to the job. And I would like him to carry on for the remaining year of this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other nominations? There being no other nominations, I can declare that Councillor Carroll is duly elected as chairman.
So that's right. Yeah. Again, do you want to?
Okay, thank you for that, and I'm grateful for your support, Bill. I did listen about my sense of humour, and thank you for that. You appreciate it. I mean, the essence of this committee is actually to all get on, and I think we all do that, don't we? We all do this for the right reasons. Right, appointment of vice chairman. Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Are there nominations for the position of Vice Chairman for the year 24-25?
Can I possibly do that?
Can, Chair.
Mahbub Hussain. I'll propose that.
Is there a seconder? Thank you. Are there any other nominations? There being no other nominations, Councillor Hussain OBE is duly elected Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Vice Chairman. Thank you.
Have I got to go over there again? Yeah, swapping seats. Anyway, thank you for that, and I hope we're going to find this meeting a very humorous one, but a very serious one as well, of course. Katie. Apologies.
There's councillors Exon and Khan.
Minutes to the last meeting approved. Any comments on that, Robin?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just a comment, not disagreement. The page 16 to 17 obviously is very key to the way that we pursue our auditing trail, which is with the HMI CF report. The Chairman's confident that we can do a job of scrutinising that process through the coming year. It's a rather big thing to do. Although I do note from attending the executive meeting the other day that how the team are progressing that, but I think our role is to audit that and to just monitor the progress of it. Is the Chairman confident that through the work programme of the year we'll be able to do that?
Well, I've been in this position 3 years, and I've been on the authority for a number of years, and I'm confident we will do that, and certainly with the abilities and experience of our officers, I'm very confident of that. So, and of course, with the critical friend of your comments, will come over next year as well. So that's what we're here for.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I look forward to working.
I do appreciate your
resolution.
I do really appreciate your comments. Thank you.
You're the only person who ever said that, but
I'll put it on record then. Right, matters arising, previous meeting.
Thank you, Chairman. There are three matters arising. First, OA 36 internal audit. Both Ernst & Young and the new auditors, KPMG, plan to come and give a much fuller update to the July committee meeting and the progress of the statement of accounts. And we welcome Philip Kent from KPMG to the meeting today.
We do. Thank you very much.
Secondly, OA 40 corporate risk management. Over the next few months, there would be a survey of property standards at all stations, including engaging with staff, and this would be brought back to a future meeting. The update there, Chairman, is that this work is still ongoing and a report will be presented later in the year. Finally, OA 43 Treasury Management Performance 23-24. The Director of Finance and Assets advised that at the last authority meeting, members asked for the benchmarking report, which would be brought to the next meeting. Members will see that this is included within item 13, Treasury Management Performance 23-24. Concludes the matters arising, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Number 6, disclosure of interests. I'm looking around. Any at all? That's noted. Questions? Katie?
None, Chairman.
Okay. Right. Item 8 is external planning for the 2003 to 24. What have we got there? So we've got Philip, haven't we? Could you like to introduce yourself, please? And we got a new member here, so could you explain what your role is, please?
Sure, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Philip Kent, Senior Manager at KPMG and the Engagement Manager for the audit of the authority's financial statements for the year ending 31st of March 24 and onwards. As well as my role as your engagement manager, I'm also a local resident, so someone who knows the services you provide well. Pleased to present today our plan for the audit of your financial statements for the 31st March 24.
Just wait a minute. I think there's a bit of a problem with hearing.
Oh,
did you press the button?
is this clearer?
Hear that?
Is this any better? Hello? Is that better now? Lovely. Is this any clearer? Oh, that sounds much better, yeah.
Yeah, you have that one, Robin.
Well done, Robin. Well done. Well, carry on.
Yeah. So today I'm here to present our external audit plan for the audit of your financial statements for the year ending 31st of March 24. The plan that we have shared within the papers today is in draft. When we prepared this plan, we were still performing our planning procedures, and since then the draft financial statements for the authority have been made available to us. At this stage, I don't see anything which is going to be drastically different now having reviewed those financial statements, but if anything was to change as we continue our work, we will endeavour to let you know. I'll speak today very briefly about the scope of our audit, both for the financial statements and our work over value for money, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. Start on page 3 of our report, which I think is 25 of the pack. This sets the materiality that we are applying to the audit. This is the level at which we would consider any errors or frauds identified in the financial statements to be material to the users of the accounts, which we have set at £750,000. We plan our work to ensure we have sufficient evidence over all material balances. And in addition to that, any errors or issues that we do identify in excess of £37,500, we will bring to the committee's attention, even if they are not material, so you have a full and complete picture of the quality of the financial statements. We have 2 significant audit risks as part that we've identified as part of our audit. These are areas where we think there is the greatest potential for a material misstatement to arise from our audit work. This is not to say we believe there are any material weaknesses or issues with how the authority prepares its financial statements, but it's the areas where we need to place the greatest level of effort into our work to respond to that potential. There are two identified. The first one, which is set out on page 6 of our report, which is 28 of the pack, is in relation to management override of controls. This is a risk that auditing standards require us to identify in all audits, from the smallest of sole traders through to the largest listed organisations. And this reflects the fact that senior management have the ability to bypass internal controls to make adjustments to the financial statements that maybe don't go through the same level of review and approval. And that is not to say we believe there is any heightened risk of this at the authority, and in fact we haven't identified any particular circumstances that might suggest this is a heightened risk, but professional standards require us to communicate this risk to you in all circumstances. The way we respond to this is to consider how the authority prepares accounting estimates to see whether they are balanced in nature or whether they contain optimism or cautious bias. We assess the manual journal entries, so the manual accounting entries that are used to prepare the financial statements, where they are prepared out of a more routine process, such as the recording of invoices, to assess if any of those manual entries could be indicative of any inappropriate action. Needless to say, in the vast majority of cases, these are routine and appropriate. And if we were to identify any significant, unusual, or major one-off transactions that the authority may have incurred, we would assess whether these are appropriate, whether there's a valid rationale for these transactions having taken place, and whether the accounting for them is appropriate. I believe at this stage we haven't identified any of those, but we will continue to remain alert as our work goes on. The other significant risk we have identified is in relation to the valuation of defined benefit pension scheme liabilities. So the authority has two such defined benefit pension schemes. First of all, it's a member of the Buckinghamshire Local Government Pension Scheme, and secondly, it is a member of the Firefighters Pension Scheme. The authority is required to recognise a liability relating to the future costs it will need to incur to be able to pay benefits to its members going many, many decades into the future. Qualified actuaries to calculate those liabilities. The nature of them means that a small change in highly judgmental and complicated assumptions, such as discount rates, can have a material impact on the value of that liability, which is why we identify it as a significant risk. Whilst we appreciate that this isn't a cash liability, it doesn't reflect the cash that the authority is going to incur within the next year. It is an important figure which auditing standards require us to pay a special care of detail to. And the way we will approach this risk is to understand the competence and capability of the actuaries that the authority uses, to understand whether the assumptions used in the valuation of the pension scheme liabilities are within a reasonable range calculated by our own actuaries. And we also use our own actuaries to assess whether the calculation of those liabilities has been prepared correctly and in line with the applicable professional standards. Those are the only two significant risks that we've identified as part of our audit. The last bit I was going to briefly speak to was our work in respect to value for money. Hopefully members will be aware that local auditors are required to assess whether local public bodies have appropriate arrangements and procedures in place to achieve value for money for taxpayers. And we look at this by assessing whether organisations have appropriate arrangements to ensure their financial sustainability, whether they have appropriate governance arrangements in place, and whether they have appropriate arrangements to improve economy, efficiency and effectiveness. The purpose of this exercise is not to assess the merits of any particular policy or activity that the authority may be undertaking, but to assess whether the step that the authority takes to reach those decisions is appropriate and in line with good practice. At the completion of our audit, we will issue some public-facing commentary in the form of an annual auditor's report, which will set out to the public the work we've done, both on the financial statement side, but also to assess whether the authority has those good arrangements in place and whether there are any opportunities for the authority to improve, as well as if there is any good practice we may wish to highlight. As part of this work, we do some what you may call business as usual work to set ongoing arrangements such as budgetary control and approving business cases. But we're also required to identify whether there are any specific matters which may yield a significant value for money risk, which means an area where there may be further work required for us to be able to conclude that the authority has good arrangements in place. Based on our risk assessment work to date, we are aware of a recent inspection by HM Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, and therefore it is likely that we will be doing further work to understand the arrangements that the authority has in place to respond to that inspection and to take any necessary action that may have arisen as a result. As we continue to understand the outcome of that work and the ongoing activities the authority has had, we will advise the committee if we believe any further procedures are necessary for us to conclude and what our view is on the progress you have made to date. And finally, on page number 19 of our report, which is page 41 of the pack, there is a confirmation from us to confirm our independence and therefore ability to act as your independent auditor. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
You're very in-depth, very good, actually, very accurate. Robin, I believe you've got a question.
Is that working now? It's working now. Thank you very much. Yeah, well, firstly, thank you very much for the report. A bit of a scattergun collection of questions. You'll be coming back in October with a strategy report. You're looking at the HMNC report, a little bit explanation how you feel your role involves in that, and the financial statements which you allude to on page 47. It is alluded to in conversations that we may be in a situation where we can at last go for 3-year planning in financial planning, which will be a lot easier for people to balance the budgets over the round. Will that change the way you audit us, or will the questions be as prescripted to the financial year in which you're doing it? Because when planning for 3 years, it's quite different to what we've experienced as a 1-year financial package. I believe we're going to be moving to the old tradition of having a 3-year financial package, which allows people to plan more successfully and be more reactive over the round. Do you think those points are worthy points, and how do you feel that your role in helping us in that situation will be beneficial?
So our work in relation to both the inspectorate report and the budget setting, which I think were the two areas you focused on, Councillor, our role, this would link into our work over value for money, and our work is to assess the arrangements you have had in place over the course of the financial year. So we're not required to assess stuff which hasn't happened yet or you're in the process of doing after the year end, because that will be the subject of the subsequent year's annual auditor's report. However, I think budget setting is a good example. If you are in a place where you're able to set a 3-year financial plan, that may be something that you have been doing during 23-24. So even though elements of that plan will spread out into the future, we would be very interested in assessing the work you have done during the course of 23-24 to produce that plan. And certainly if we had any observations or feedback on that, we would make that available to you.
Robin.
So do you think it's a reasonable aspiration to ask you whether you'd come back in January, which seems the most appropriate period to, if decisions are taken in that fashion, that local authorities can start, and fire authorities and other people can start planning for 3 years, that you would have to change the way that you scrutinise things, because you won't have all the information in one financial window. It will spread over a longer period of time, which is a different sort of governance than just doing it in a 12 months window, because it will allow the fire authority to plan much more succinctly. And that needs different type of auditing and governance to what we've got now, because the preset window will be around that period.
Mark?
Yeah, so just in terms of the planning, regardless of whether we get a 1 year or 3 year settlement, we will still produce a 3-year plan. It's just the amount of certainty we have over some of those numbers. But regardless of what the settlement is, we'll still do that 3-year planning horizon. So I don't think it will materially change the work the auditors do in respect to that. It's more for our own certainty for planning assumptions going forwards.
Louise, you're going to say much the same? So we were in a procedure and a process, so we're always forever looking at this anyway. And Mark's absolutely right. We've got a process to stick to, and it's worked well. And thank you for that question anyway, Robin. Any other questions? Right.
Recommendation on page 21, Chairman, that the content of the report be noted.
Agreed. 9 is going to be Mark. Oh, of course, yeah. Moving on.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to provide a verbal update to the committee on the progress being made in delivering the 24-25 internal audit plan. So we haven't included a paper at this point in time, but we just want to provide some assurance that work is progressing with regard to that plan. So we have completed one assurance engagement, and it just didn't make the deadline for this meeting. So you should see that at the November meeting. So onto the paper today. This report we're presenting to you today outlines the internal audit work undertaken by the service for the year ending 31st of March 24 and provides an opinion on the adequacy and effectiveness of the control environment, detailing any incidences of significant control failure or weakness. The accounting and audit regulations require the fire authority to maintain an adequate and effective internal audit service in accordance with proper internal audit practice. And the SIPFA public sector internal audit standards by which we comply with set out the proper practice for internal audit and requires that the chief internal auditor provides a written annual report to those charged with governance to support the authorities' annual governance statements. It should be noted that internal audit is not responsible for the control system. The responsibility sits with management, who are accountable for maintaining the sound system of internal control. I would also like to highlight that no system of internal control can provide absolute assurance against material misstatements or loss. Nor can internal audit give absolute assurance. The provision of this opinion has been achieved through the risk-based audit plan, which was agreed by senior management and approved by this committee last year. As such, the 2023 Chief Internal Audit opinion for this year is of reasonable assurance. It should be noted that the Chief Internal Audit opinion does not imply that internal audit has reviewed all risks relating to the fire authority. The most that internal audit can provide to the accountable officers and to this committee is reasonable assurance that there are no major weaknesses in control processes. The work we've undertaken during 23-24 has identified some areas that require further improvement to ensure that the internal control framework remains adequate and effective. However, we did not identify any material weaknesses that raise any concerns to the general framework. Overall, we have concluded that the authority has maintained an adequate and effective framework of governance, risk management, and internal control. On page 56 of your papers, we've provided a table that summarises the assurance opinions that we've reached through the audit engagements that we've delivered in the year. And Appendix 1, which is on page 61 of your papers, provides a detailed summary of the findings raised for each audit review undertaken. Please note that all audit reports were presented to this committee. As such, the information in Appendix 1 has been reviewed by the committee during the year. It is management's responsibility for monitoring the implementation of agreed audit actions following each audit review. Appendix 2, which is on page 76 of the papers, details the implementation status of the agreed audit actions. We worked throughout the year to ensure that the the authority does continue to implement those actions and through senior management escalate instances when progress is not being made. During 23-24, there have been no suspected frauds or financial irregularity brought to our attention. As such, this area has no issues of concern to raise. During the year, the Internal Audit Service has also continued to conform to the public sector internal audit standards, and we undertook a self-assessment during the year, which is a requirement of the standards, and confirmed that we continue to operate within the requirements and continue to conform. I will pause there for any questions and any specific areas of the report.
Robin.
Firstly, thank you for the report. It's a good report. The obvious one, which I expect members have all seen, is your comments around the crucial risks around suppliers. Your explanation in it is satisfactory, but we need to discuss what we're going to do about that. It isn't something that we can necessarily easily control when it comes to suppliers. Also, it's not a criticism, but it's a comment. We have a lot of things in the medium risk category, for things that we might see need to be monitored, like the corporate management framework, and we could go on. Will those elements within the KPIs and such like within your audit, do you see them drifting down into the green towards the end of the financial year, or are they such significant concerns that they're likely to stay where they are for some time? I know that sounds, without reading them out one after the other, there are an awful lot that you've put into the medium risk. Having a lot of medium risk adds up to a big risk if you were to calculate them all together. And that's probably just the way I read the reports. It might not be thus that is the case, and that's really why I'm asking the question. But the crucial suppliers, I think you'll be able to give a reasonable explanation around that, because we are in a public meeting, and about how you do that, because it's in the script you put on against it. I hope that's all right, Chairman.
Yeah, so with regard to the findings from the contract critical supply management review, most of the observations will enhance the general framework and the processes relating to contract management. So once those are implemented, you would assess those to now be low, as long as they've been embedded as a process. So as part of our processes, we do contact the service for evidence that those actions have been taken. It has become BAU, and as long as it continues to be maintained as now a BAU practice, that risk will fundamentally go down. And that applies equally to the finding one. It is just a change of practice. And I think once that's embedded again and it's a normal application across all contracts, that will mitigate that risk overall. There'll always be an inherent risk, but I wouldn't expect that to be high and medium going forward once the actions have been done.
And just to comment, it's probably unfair, but that we have a lot of things in the medium, which add up to quite a risk if you add them all together. Although I believe that those can be mitigated, and things like the KPIs and such like, you've got them all in the medium. Do you anticipate by the time we meet again, or by January, that we'd have got them down into the green?
Mark, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I'll come in on that one. So thank you. Yeah, as Selina said, the way we're approaching contract management was a new way of doing it. So moving to a risk-based approach. So not doing the same management for every supplier, but focusing on the ones that are kind of big numbers or risk critical. So we could have some relatively low value contracts, but they're risk critical to the organisation. So for example, like servicing of BA compressors doesn't cost a lot. We need to make sure that that is absolutely on point, because that's critical for the health and safety of our staff. So it was a very new approach when it was audited. The audit team have come up with some really good recommendations on how we can kind of embed that, as Selina said, make sure that it's kind of as best as it can be going forwards. There are lots of mediums, but we're kind of working through those. We can certainly bring an update as to how they've been addressed when we next meet in November, I think it is.
Just to be fair, Chairman, the report states that you're going to bring updates. I didn't say that, and that's most unfair. I mean, you are going to bring updates, but as this is a public meeting, you ask the questions in one way and wait for the answer which you're going to give. Thank you.
Okay. Carry on, or okay? Happy? Right.
Thank you, Chairman.
The only
Recommend.
thing I will say, actually, I think it's worth saying about, Robin said about this committee, and experience, we're on about quality of what we do here and processes. There's an awful lot of work goes into this by officers, and I think we all appreciate that, don't we? So thank you for all that.
That's fine, Chairman. Shall I take members to the recommendation?
Yes.
Recommendation is at page 51 that the progress on the annual internal audit plan be noted.
All agreed? Next item, Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. As members will have seen from the report at pages 81 and to 105 of your packs, there have been no changes to the risk scores or the RAG status of the corporate risk register, nor any new items added to the corporate risk register since it was last reviewed by this committee at its March meeting. However, since then, it has been regularly reviewed by officers at our performance monitoring and strategic management boards, most recently by the Chief Fire Officer and her Strategic Management Board on the 18th of June, and also by lead members where individual risks fall within their areas of reference. Appendix 3, which starts at page 89 of the agenda pack, contains the detailed evaluations and status reports for the individual corporate risks. Although there have been no fundamental changes to the risk assessments, there have nonetheless been some developments in relation to some of these risks that I will draw your attention to before referring back to the Chairman for any questions or comments that members may have. First, regarding the workforce availability risk, which is detailed at pages 90 and 91 of your papers, I want to draw members' attention to the positive action policy that has now been approved by the authority at its annual meeting on the 12th of June, and the new cohort of whole-time apprentice firefighters who are due to start in September. Turning to the financial stability risk, officers have kept the risk score and the RAG status at the low end of the medium spectrum, but will keep this under active review. You will note at page 95, and it won't escape your notice, that the general election has now taken place. In terms of the implications for
No questions, Robin.
In terms of the implications for the financial settlement of 25-26, I will now pause and invite Mark Hemming to provide any information or insight that he can share with members about that.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Graham. I think we've touched on a lot of this earlier about the settlement. We're still not sure whether it's going to be a one-year rollover or a 3-year kind of comprehensive spending review. We're preparing for both situations. I have the benefit of sitting on the kind of National Finance Committee, so I kind of get to see the situation that others are in. And whilst we're never going to be flush with money, anecdotally, I think we are quite a good position financially. So I'm relatively comfortable that whether it's 1 year or 3 year, we'll be well geared up for that. We are during this year in preparation for the launch of the CRMP from 1st of April next year, doing a full zero-based budget review again. So looking at every line item, looking for possible savings and making sure that all our budgets are aligned to deliver against our new strategic objectives going forwards.
Robin.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Mark, for touching on the Treasury manager thing. We do wait for the government to say whether we have a 3-year. And we do have an advantage over what we did before in the sense that one of our members of Parliament is part of the Treasury now. So hopefully at some point the Chief of the Fire Service will be meeting those MPs. There's quite a different change of MPs. We won't go into the detail of why, but there's quite a different change of MPs. And also we are fortunate that one of the MPs was a member of this authority. So you have someone who will be able to instantly explain the difficulties that we experience in budgeting for 3 years and the window. So will that through the chief that be taken up at the earliest opportunity? Because I think whatever is announced in the spending review, having the opportunity to talk to that member of Parliament directly about that is something that we're privileged to have. So, and also it's in their interest that our service is successful, safe and operates as we all want it to. And I don't think that's a political issue. It's the fact that we all want it to. So will that be taken up? And I do thank you for the report. And on the staffing issue, it is notable. We have to say it's notable what you've done to lessen the risk. And from July 2023 until we are now, we have to make positive comments about how much improvement's been on there, how much work's gone into that to achieve that. And that is no easy matter. But staffing is always a risk. And the position of Buckinghamshire where it is, we know what the reasons are, and we just need to keep monitoring that going forward and not retreat from our view of taking on young and training in-house, which seems to be working successfully. And I'm sure that's not going to change, but if that does change, that would increase the risk, I believe, of staffing problems. But those questions, I think one of them is a polite question to the chief, and the other one is a commentary on the good report that you presented and the work that you've actually done within there as a team, which is laudable.
Chief?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
In terms of getting those meetings in with new MPs as soon as we can. So I'll be getting those invites out for them to come in and meet me and myself and the team very shortly.
And the chairman, of course.
Of course.
Yeah. Right, continue.
Thank you, Chairman. Moving on to the climate change risk, I would draw members' attention to page 101, which confirms that all three of the services wildfire vehicles are now on the run. Finally, I will mention the ongoing work in relation to the values and culture risk, which is detailed at pages 102 to 105 of the agenda packs. A new culture board comprised of officers, employee representatives and the lead member for people, which was tentatively called the Strategic Culture Group in the agenda packs, has had its inaugural meeting last Friday, chaired by the Deputy Chief Fire Officer. As well as finalising its terms of reference, the service's new People and Culture Officer presented his proposals to help embed equality, diversity and inclusion when engaging with the public and businesses, as well as internally. Chairman, I'll now hand back to you and happy to try and field any questions.
One other question from Robin.
Thank you, Graham, for that. One of the things which is important in my limited experience about key in understanding diversity is to have a diversity within the people which are understanding the diversity. And can I be assured that the people who are looking at this match the large diversity of our community as best as we can with the membership of the authority, because that is understanding issues about sometimes if you're a member of that group and that community, you are privileged enough to know information that all the people don't know, and you can bring that to make the balance more successful, and you can ease through the difficulties. What is the makeup of that committee? Does it match the cultural background of Buckinghamshire, or does it match the cultural background of the members of the fire authority? Because there's quite a difference, I think, in that. I think, and that's not a criticism; it's an actuality. We can see that as we sit in this room today.
Right. Answer to that? Yeah, got it.
Thank you. Can you hear me? So we've done a lot of work in terms of the D&I data for our employees. So we do continue to work on improving that. In terms of the culture board, as Graham said, the first meeting was on Friday the 12th. So we were looking at the terms of reference and who should be on that board to make sure that that was reflective. The next part is to look at our staff networks. So we're looking to set up staff networks to be reflective of the protected characteristics. And that was part of the work that Peter Sanford, our People and Culture Officer, is working on and presented. So the terms of reference for the staff networks are going to be making sure that we are reflective of our workforce, and we aim to be reflective of the community.
Robin.
Thank you, Anne, for the response. What I'm trying to get at is that we live in a strange situation where, though the background of our community may be larger than the background of the people present in the room, and I'm what was the makeup of the members being the elected members of that committee, we need to make sure that that respects the differences within the outside community, rather than not, because I believe that people from different backgrounds to myself can bring so much more to the conversation than I can myself. I come from an agricultural background. I don't think everyone needs to know how much a lamb weighs before it goes to market. But being quite clear, my knowledge skill rests there. Other knowledge skills rest in the diversity of their community, the needs of them communities and what they can bring. And we can be more successful if we know that the members of that committee, being the elected members of that committee, to the best of our abilities, respects those differences. And as I say, we only got to look in every meeting we go to see that it's difficult to get to that. So I hope that that will reflect that. I'm not saying I'm diverse in any way or form, but I'm saying we are privileged to have members on our authority who are from different communities who can bring so much more to that conversation than I could myself.
Well, that's all been noted. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Chairman. If there are no other questions, I'll take members to the recommendations on page 81 of your agenda packs. First, that the status of identified corporate risks at Annex C be reviewed and approved. Secondly, that the comments be provided to officers for consideration and
Agreed.
attention in future update reports.
Thank you very much. Moving on. Next one, Graham.
So just navigating my papers. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. This is the 22-23 Statement of Assurance. As members can see, this Statement of Assurance covers the period from the 1st of April 22 to the 31st of March 23. The Statement of Assurance is the last piece in the governance jigsaw and normally cannot be finalised until all other key inputs are received and approved by this committee. As members will be aware, there have been significant delays to the external audits of the authority's financial statements over the last couple of years, something that has affected many public bodies as well as this authority. This has had a knock-on effect on the production of other financial assurance and governance related documents, in particular the Statement of Assurance, with the 21-22 Statement of Assurance having only been signed off in July of last year. Pretty much everything else in the statement has been considered before by this committee, so it only really serves as a summary and overview of the outcomes of the more detailed underlying assurance activities ranging across the financial, governance and operational functions and processes that were reported to this committee during the course of the financial year 22-23. The format and content of the statement is based on the government guidance published in 27 to 133 of your agenda packs. This guidance has not been updated since then and therefore remains extant. Updates relative to the previous year's statement are shaded grey in the draft statement, which is at pages 111 to 126 of your packs. These include outcomes from assurance activities and the internal auditor's opinions in relation to finance and governance. You will also see that officers have provided hyperlinks to the more detailed reports referenced in the document. Essentially, the Statement of Assurance acts as a dashboard covering the span of all the key assurance work undertaken during the year in question. I don't propose to go through the fine detail of the statement, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions that members may have before you consider the recommendation, which is at page 107. Thank you, Chair.
Robin.
Firstly, importantly, to thank you for the report. Secondly, to ask on 1.4 of the first page is the report, you quite rightly mentioned HMRC and Magistrate Inspector's visit, and we have mentioned in other meetings, both executive and here, how we're going to work through that and the collaborative. But the point you made about the regulations being quite historic around the way that we act, and the point that you made carries a lot of weight, I believe, in the fact that we're unable, auditing local government accounts has been, let's say, for quite some time, quite difficult. I do believe Buckinghamshire Council, till I'm corrected, hasn't actually got a set of audited accounts yet from 2020 to 2021. So these are quite difficult things to progress, unless I can be advised by the end of the day that they've actually now got a set of audited accounts. That's still in abeyance. So these things are difficult, and they can give a disjointed view of what the authority is doing, because I'm absolutely sure in all cases that the business goes on the same and the services get delivered whenever it happens. It's just that set of accounts are difficult to sign off, mainly because getting auditors to do it has been not that easy, has it? And but do you believe that guidance stands the test of time? Or do you think that's something that needs to be looked at going forward, taking into consideration the difficulty we have of getting auditors, and the time spans around auditing accounts against local authorities of all description? It's been very difficult for everybody, let's be honest.
Always challenging. Mark?
Yeah, I think the guidance that Graham was referring to here is in particular to the statement of assurance rather than statement of accounts. However, yeah, I recognise there is an issue with audits and statement of accounts. So there is a proposal to clear the backlog of audits by disclaiming a certain number of years of accounts. However, I believe there's some guidance or legislation that's still needed to firm up the wording of what disclaimer opinions look like. And with the general election being called, that throughout the timing of that a little bit. So we're kind of, I can't speak for Bucks Council, but as a Bucks Fire Authority, we still haven't had our 22-23 accounts audited, and we are expecting that they won't ever be audited and they will just be disclaimed, but we're still waiting for what that disclaimer looks like and how that may pan out. And it's not because of anything we've done, it's purely because of the capacity the auditors have had to deal with those historic accounts and the process for moving it forwards.
Robin?
I don't understand this. I mean, it's not meant to be the way it sounds. What does disclaim mean? Because it's to me, I understand. I think that it's the necessary things have been done and the risks are negligible. But to say disclaim in a meeting could give the wrong impression that there's something that hasn't been done properly. That isn't the case. I think a little explanation what a disclaim means, because someone could interpret that quite differently to what I believe you're saying.
Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was my concern when I first heard the word disclaimer opinion. I kind of, it almost fell off my chair. I think Philip might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's kind of two broad disclaimer opinions. One is where the auditors have looked at it and the accounts are so awful and the working papers are so bad, the auditors just go, we cannot possibly assure you any of that. In this case, they're simply saying, we haven't got the time to look at it. It's not a comment on what's in the accounts at all. They're just saying, we just haven't got the time. We're going to clear it as part of the backlog. We'll start again with kind of a new set of accounts. That does make it tricky for Philip and his team because they haven't got the assurance of the previous audit to rely on, so they have to do extra work to reassure themselves opening balances, etc. So you will eventually get the assurance that actually they were probably okay in terms of the main numbers. But yeah, it's not coming on statements itself. It's more of a situation of where we find ourselves because of the backlog.
Thank you for the explanation. I think it's important that was there because anyone could misconstrue that response.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to only just add that, yes, the requirement of a statement of assurance is a creature of the national framework, and the national framework itself is looking at a bit dusty in terms of the fact it dates from 2018, and I think we're still waiting for a new national framework. But point noted.
Okay.
We're away.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. In that case, I'll take members to the recommendation, which is at page 107 of your agenda packs, that the 22-23 Statement of Assurance be approved for signature by the Chairman of the Overview and Audit Committee, which is you, Chair, of course, and the Chief Fire Officer.
Great. Thank you. Item 12.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just navigate my papers.
Yes.
One moment. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. This is the annual governance statement 23-24. The purpose of this report is to gain approval for the annual governance statement 23-24 to be signed off by the Chairman of the Authority and the Chief Fire Officer in advance of the approval of the statement of accounts for 23-24, whenever that may be. The draft annual governance statement is at pages 139 to 163, with its appendices A and B having been circulated by members separately. So members will have a copy of those appendices in front of them. The format of the annual governance statement is the same as in previous years to reflect the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, i.e. CIPFA, and the Society of Local Government Executives Solace Guidance. SIPFA has recently announced that during 24-25 it will be consulting on its proposed revised guidance for annual governance statements. So we await that consultation in due course. As is usual, the annual governance statement contains an extract from the Chief Internal Auditor's opinion from her annual report, which the committee has received already at this meeting. And this is set out at page 163 of the agenda pack. Appendix A contains the progress against the action plan from the 22-23 annual governance statement. Members may note that three actions are being carried forward into the 24-25 action plan, and they will therefore be reproduced in Appendix B before the draft statement is finalised for signature by the Chairman of the Authority and by the Chief Fire Officer. Appendix B contains one new action to add to those ones being carried over, which is a review of the internal governance arrangements, which concerns those meetings held at officer level to support the delivery of the new CRMP and also the recent appointment of the service's new Director of HR and Organisational Development. I'll leave it there, Chairman, but I'll try and field any questions.
Robin.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. It covers it. The one area which I would like to touch on, in the sense that the climate action area of it, we now have a much more proactive approach to that, which is thanks to the work of the officers to do that. But I do think the way that we judge that, because we cannot control the progression of what's going to happen with the climate, and we keep getting told in various places it's been raining a lot, and we're not here to make excuses for the weather. For what we do, we just deal with the circumstances that we've been. Do you believe that in itself needs to be more prominent? Because I think it would be reasonable to say that this has probably been quite a heavy year for rain. Only just recently, I expect the authority were involved in Chesham with the flooding in summer and stuff. So I think that I'm just saying that, though I'm happy to agree it, I just want to be conscious that we are continuously monitoring that change, because there's various reasons why that happened. But North Buckinghamshire is just as vulnerable as South Buckinghamshire to this, and we can do nothing about the substructure of the soil and where the water table is. But I do think that we may be having to, as years move forward, put more effort into this area, and that will need careful planning.
Chairman, I've got a lot of those elements are captured in the corporate risk register, but in terms of the operational response, perhaps if you hand over to of course, Chief.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think one of the focuses from our corporate risk register around climate change is the way that we can be more prepared operationally to deal with these high impact, low frequency events. One of the elements that we've certainly developed since 2022, the heat wave, is around our wildfire capability, and we are now in a much more flexible sort of landscape where we can crew up to high impact events, in a more proactive way than we did previously. And that was one of the key elements of our public safety plan, which is live now, to be more flexible in our resourcing capabilities. I don't know if Mark, if you want to comment on the climate action plan in terms of premises as well, but in terms of ops, we are in a much better position than we were.
Yeah, so there's two parts of the climate action plan. There's kind of how we respond operationally to the effects of climate change, and then there's how we mitigate our own impacts on the climate change. So we continue to take actions, as you referenced, the climate action plan, which is very important. So we recently completed the installation of solar panels at Marlow, for example. So mitigate our impact there, because that's one of our busiest stations in terms of collaboration, because we share that with fire investigation, air ambulance, gas. So that's having a real positive impact, along with other things we're doing there. And just to add to what Simon was saying, in terms of, you referenced earlier, the really good work that's been done around recruitment and getting the numbers up, that's really helped with that proactive crewing. Simon mentioned the wildfires. We had a conversation probably a few weeks ago where there's a weather forecast, you're going to get some hot kind of spells. We see that kind of 3 or 4 days out, possibly. So we positively crewed the wildfire units to mitigate that risk. So it's a much more flexible, as Simon says, responding to those high impact, infrequent events, make sure we scale up and down appropriately. So we're much more able to do that now, thanks to the hard work you referenced earlier around the staffing and getting us in that much better position.
Robin.
It's meant to be a positive. This, I think that we're approaching harvest time. We're approaching where a lot of standing crops, which standing crops anyone knows, a fire in a standing crop can go right across the field in no space and time. I do think through the chief and the chair, this might be something that we need to communicate out to people at this point of time before harvest starts, that this is the one time a year that risk becomes penultimate. Anyone who's seen been involved in that type of thing, and I've seen it can go really rapidly, and a bit of communication around that to say to the public, don't throw your cigarette out the door. Please don't have the obvious ones. We need to be doing that because before the crop's harvest, because if you lose your crop, you lose hedgerow, and you lose it. It doesn't stop there, and it goes from neighbour to neighbour, and there is a risk. And 2 years ago, we were really, thanks to the good work of the team, we managed to contain it. But that weekend, we were really under immense pressure. We were told, not us, the members of the authority, but the firefighters and the service are under immense pressure trying to contain those wildfires. And we must not forget the lessons learned from that. But I think a bit of communication through the chief and the chairman to make sure we get that message out there to the public. We can all help in that, but we can't speak for the fire authority. Only the chief and the chairman can.
Simon.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The standing crop risk, when it comes into light over the next kind of coming weeks and months, is our biggest kind of wildfire risk across Bucks and Milton Keynes. Absolutely right there. I think one of the good things that came out of 2022 was that it opened a lot of doors in terms of our communication with the likes of the National the Farmers Union, the Forestry Commission, how we prepare for those sorts of things, and also we really focused our prevention messaging in ensuring that we get that the community gets wildfire ready, which is something that we will do as we go into the the hot dry periods, as well as that we'll pick up that social media and that interaction with the public to make sure they are tuned into what they can do to prevent these things happening as well.
Just lastly, Chairman, will we be,
Simon?
will we be,
Yeah, okay, Simon, you finish with that.
will we,
Robin,
will
okay.
will we take it? Because one of the biggest chances of communicating in Buckinghamshire, both to the community and the public, about those type of risks is the county show. Because quite frankly, you get people coming to have a look at what the farming industry is doing, but you also have people in the farming industry who are key to it and who invest in that industry. I'm presuming that we'll have a presence. I'm presuming that we will be able to get that messaging out there, because it's really important that we do, because people stop. And the most important thing as a small child is to climb in a fire engine and sit on the seat, isn't it?
Okay, we've got an answer down there.
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, thanks for the question. Yes, we are attending the county show. It's in short, we are preparing for that as well to what items we take with us around wildfire and that sort of thing, and that seasonal approach. But it's a big audience for us that we want to hit, and it on a number of levels as well, about home fire safety visits as well. So it won't just be about the climate; it'll be about all the other opportunities we can, including recruitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. If there are no further questions, I'll take members to the recommendations on page 135. The three in number. First, that the annual governance statement 23-24 be approved. Second, that the progress on the implementation of the recommendations of the previous annual governance statement, which is Appendix A, which is in front of members on their desks, be noted, and that priorities for 24-25, which is Appendix B, which is also on your desks, be agreed.
You agree? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you've got to remember, Robin, that we brought about the climate action plan. Last year, we put it together ourselves on this committee. So thanks for your prompting on that.
It was my input that drove it forward.
We all agree with that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Good morning, members and officers. Today I'll be presenting you with the Treasury Management Performance Report for 23-24. The accrued interest earned for that financial year was 983,000, which is an overachievement of 633,000 against a budget of 350,000. In terms of investments, on page 170 of your pack, at the end of March 2024, the authority had 17.6 million invested in various counterparties, including banks, building societies, money market funds, and current accounts. As you can see from the investment charts on page 171 of your packs, we have deals maturing on a frequent basis to ensure we're able to meet our short-term expenditure requirements. In terms of borrowing, on page 172 of your packs, the authority paid out 263,000 in loan interest payments during the year, and the authority also repaid 2 loans, one which was for 627,000, and that was paid early, and we received a discount of £45,000 in doing so. And the other was on maturity for £1 million, and this was paid in March 2024. This reduced the overall loans from the start of the year at 6.17 million down to 4.55 million as at the end of March 2024. The next loan is not due to mature until 2027, and funds have already been set aside to repay this when due. In terms of benchmarking, following a question asked at the authority in February regarding benchmarking against other local authorities and the impact of inflation, 2 charts have been added to this report on page 174. The top graph shows how we compare to other local authorities who use Link as their treasury advisors. The horizontal axes show the projected weighted average rate of return, and the vertical axes show the actual weighted average rate of return. Closer to the top left, the better. And as you can see from the chart, we're one of the better performing authorities in 23-24 against those local authorities. This is down to how we accurately manage our cash flow to enable us to place a range of deals without having to meet the need of undue credit risk. The second table shows the impact of inflation, housing authorities, borrowing and investment comparing 2024 to 2019, and this was done using the Bank of England's inflation calculator. With regards to the interest rates, the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee has kept the interest base rate at 5.25% since August 2023. The next review date is the 1st of August 2024. Our Treasury advisors are projecting the base rate to not increase and for a steady reduction over the next 18 months. When reinvesting surplus funds, we're now seeing majority of rates between 6 and 12 months being below the current base rate, and this is the market anticipating for the interest rates to reduce in the next few months. With regards to the budgets set for 23-24, as I mentioned before, we clearly exceeded this, and this has now had an impact on the 24-25 budgets we have set, and the budget has doubled from 350k to 700,000. Given what I said around interest rates steadily reducing over the next 18 months, we already projected to achieve that 700,000, which is good for 24-25. And in terms of the future years beyond that, the MTFP for 25-26 up to 28-29 has made assumptions to ensure that the investment income is appropriate and achievable in future years. Finally, we will continue to monitor cash flow position on a regular basis to ensure the authority can meet the short-term expenditure requirements and able to maintain adequate liquidity. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Today.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Marcus, for that presentation. Mine is more of a commendation in light of where the world is and the economy of the world is. It's how well we're doing since I've been with the authority to see the improvement, and it's consistent. So it goes down to a lot of the work that is being done by everybody, which is commendable. My question is not being greedy, but can we improve? And if yes, how and what are the implications for the whole authority if we are able to improve on our prospects as it is now?
Good question.
Yeah. In terms of the kind of treasury management returns, they're probably going to kind of forecast to decrease over the next little while because they're kind of intrinsically linked to the base rate and what we're able to achieve. You could get better returns by taking more risk, but as a local authority, our primary consideration has to be the security of the investments. So I wouldn't want to take any more risk. As Marcus referred to in terms of the benchmarking chart, we are one of the top performers already. So I think the scope to improve on that is limited because on that chart on page 174, I think it is, there's an upper and a lower return rate, and we're well above that upper rate. And we're kind of every single dot on that is another local authority, and we're outperforming pretty much every one of those, I think. So yeah, thank you for the commendation. Really appreciate that. I know Marcus was gutted he didn't quite get that £1 million mark, but him and the team have done a fantastic job. So thank you for recognising that.
Robin.
Yeah, busy. Thank you, Mark and the team, for everything you do. One of the things we have to be clear about is the interest rates controlled by the Bank of England, and that reflects whatever. I think there was confusions around that. I think they've had independence for some considerable time. So the idea that that can be influenced from external sources isn't there. The thing with the bank rate, it goes down. There are some benefits to that in borrowing, but there's also some negatives to that within interest that we earn on our. So it's good in one respect, it's bad in another. So we need to understand as it changes, which I think it will change, not for anything that anyone does, it's just cycle after a great shock. So we look at that, and then we have to look at the statement you made, which is a good statement around the £700,000, which we've come back. And we are to what was said in the executive committee about that and where those priorities come with that money. It's a very small amount of money. It sounds a lot of money, but it's a very small amount of money against the total responsibility as far as let's not get running away with the fact that we've got. It's not like your personal finances. £750,000 as far as it is a good amount of money, and it's a great success to you all getting, but it is a small amount of money. We also have some things that we have to implement, and I mentioned this at the I make no apology for saying it again. We mentioned this at the executive committee, which I was privileged enough to visit. We have the FPU manifesto coming forward, and that in that manifesto, we need to carefully look at where we can, in that small window of opportunity, use that money prudently to improve those targets where possible for our staff and people at the front end. Not to do that, I think, would be a mistake. I got assurances from the chairman, quite right, that he was looking at it, but not saying things often enough is the wrong approach. I believe that's our greatest opportunity to improve the well-being of our firefighters and our staff. And I would look to, we can't make recommendations, but I'd look for evidence that we are using that money, small amounts of money, to make small differences to improve that and meet that manifesto from the firefighters manifesto, because it was a good paper. And it'd be only unusual if we were the only people who didn't do it in the country. It might be that we even get told we've got to do it. Who knows? We will lobby on that. But I think it's key, because we can't sit here knowing that we've got a small window, because money is key to achieving that. Let's not be honest. I think the will is there. It's how we get to it. And I know it's a very long-winded question, but I asked it before and I'll ask it again, and I'll continue to ask it. Thank you.
Observations, Mark?
Yeah, just to re-emphasise what we said before in executive committee, I think for the benefit of the members that weren't on that committee, I mentioned earlier around the community risk management plan, CRMP, and how we're aligning budgets to that for the future going forwards. As a big part of preparing that CRMP was looking at the FBU manifesto, because obviously a lot of the commitments in that are commitments we'd want to reflect, as you say, on kind of the health and safety of our staff, around dignity, around equality, diversity, inclusion. So we're very much making sure that budgets are aligned to delivering some of that, not necessarily all of that, because there may be bits we disagree on, but where it's kind of mutually beneficial, we'll deliver that. And I think we committed the executive committee to bring forward a report on how we're addressing the points within the manifesto to a future meeting of that committee.
Robin,
Just lastly, I don't think it should be purely the discussion of the executive committee. I think that needs to be audited, because the executive committee might take an opinion different to the audit committee when it comes to actually auditing something. To leave that in that place, I know it will come back to the main fire authority meeting, and then it will be audit there. I think that how we progress that needs to be carefully watched, because to miss some of the important points made in that would be unacceptable to me, and difficult to understand why you wouldn't. I accept there's going to be difficulties, and you quite rightly said there may be disagreement. Happy to have the disagreement, always happy to have a disagreement. It's how we settle that disagreement which is key.
yeah, I agree. It goes to the fire authority full meeting, of course, but this is the whole point of this meeting. We look at it in depth. It's so important, this committee. The chief will probably say about that, but Mark, any more from that one?
Nothing more for me. I'll be guided by members on what governance route they want that paper to take.
For reassurance for Councillor Stotchbury, really, both myself and the DEP have regular meetings with our FBU local reps, and that manifesto is always on the agenda. So we are very much holding ourselves to account as well in terms of the progress we're making with the expectations and what we've committed to do. So it was it's not off the agenda, it's never off the agenda. And we are, I want to say, did we take an action from the last meeting to update on the manifesto from the last? Yeah, so it will be done there first and foremost. But yes, certainly our members are quite vociferous in holding us to account too.
Yeah.
I am relieved.
Thank you very much. Graham?
Thank you, Chairman. A recommendation on page 165 that the Treasury Management Performance 23-24 report be noted.
Agree? Just to say, before we go into exempt, the forward plan, I think, is set out. And they agreed to that. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
And so sum up, same again, I think this is probably, not being biased anyway, but I think this is probably one of the most important committees, because we look at all the business and particularly the finances of it, and the whole point is questions and critical friends. So and we obviously got the inspection going through here as well on a regular basis. So can I just thank everybody for their contributions on that part of it? Do you agree, Chief?
Thank you.
Yeah. Graham?
I'll put the recommendation.
Yes.
Chairman, the recommendation is that the public and press representatives be excluded from the meeting by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as the pink minutes, as we call them, contain information related to the financial or business affairs of the person, including those of the authority. And on these grounds, it is considered that the need to keep the information passes that will, in essence, terminate the YouTube recording.
Absolutely. Agreeing on that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bill.
It
Cheers.